Servus Männer, it's Red Pill Germany again. I wanted to give you a little update about the situation in Germany at the moment. So when Germans are not talking about how crazy Donald Trump is after they watched the disinformation from our mainstream media that they took directly from CNN, they are of course talking about the pandemic that we're dealing with at the moment. And now the news is out, of course, that this lockdown light that we are having since the beginning of November, and that according to our politicians would really only last for 4 weeks, will of course last longer, at least until January, I'm sure. But nobody is really surprised about that. Everybody was already assuming that when they said it's gonna be 4 weeks. Everybody knew it's not gonna be 4 weeks. So it is really funny to see how Germans are already expecting politicians to constantly lie to them. In that sense, Germans have acquired a certain sense of realism, I would say. So in today's video, I want to talk about some of the recent measures, but also about the general situation in Germany that is not very great, to say the least, and that makes me worried quite a bit. But first, I want to thank once again all my supporters and my subscribers. If you like these presentations, like, share and subscribe. If you want to support my work on this channel, you can do so directly via PayPal or via Patreon or Subscribestar, links in the description down below. So as the thumbnail already told you, I think the situation can be described by the politicians, the rulers, the elites in Germany trying to figure out how far they can go before something bad happens, and I think they're really pushing their luck. So first of all, as I said in the beginning already, of course this lockdown light, as they call it, will not last for November only. It will be extended throughout December and beyond, of course. The legal framework for all these measures is a federal law which is called Infektionsschutzgesetz. And all the state laws and all the local measures that are taken by communities or districts or something like that, they all have to conform to this federal law. And you can imagine it like this, that this federal law, it defines the arsenal, the toolbox out of which the local authorities can pick and choose whatever they see fit to implement on the district, on the community level. And let's just say that during the last weeks we saw a bunch of crazy things that are, however, according to my knowledge, I'm not a lawyer, I just read those articles, but that are fully covered by this federal law. It is just that the local authorities, they might choose to do that, or they can also do something else. Let's look at some examples. So here in Schleswig-Holstein, for example, a higher tier or higher instance court, the Oberverwaltungsgericht there, they declared that for primary school children, the mandatory wearing of masks is lawful. So little children will have to wear masks all day long while they are in school. That is already pretty extreme, I think, but it gets much worse as we go on through the video today in this presentation. By comparison, this is a very, very mild example. Before we look at the harsher ones, I want to generally remind you that we have a little cat and mouse game going on in Germany at the moment. While the executive branch, that is our federal and state governments as well as local authorities, are enacting these harsh measures, it is the courts that are declaring them illegal or unlawful in many cases. So the ruling coalition on the federal level in the Bundestag, they are suggesting to change the Infektionsschutzgesetz, the infection protection law. And they call that then, what a dystopian name, the law for the protection of the population. That could come right out of a George Orwell novel. And the goal of that is so that these new measures will be, quote unquote, court tight, gerichtsfest. That means that these measures cannot be taken back by any court of law, because then there would be a federal law that is covering all these new measures then. I don't know if for Anglophones or native speakers of English that doesn't sound like a weird or harsh word, but when my Germanic ears hear the word Gerichtsfest, then that really sounds very alarming to me, I have to tell you. Because what this tells me is that the authorities want to do things that are not in accordance with our laws, which would mean our traditions and our way of life that we used to have for a long time already. In many cases, our laws still reflect our identity and our heritage. But in order to do what they cannot do within the legal framework of our current law, they just change the law so that they can do stuff that they couldn't do until now. And all that tells us is that they are trying to radically change the way that we live here. They want to rebuild, to remodel our entire society. And in order to do that, they need to change the laws. And this health situation here is only an excuse. It is only the Trojan horse by which they want to take the city. It is not the reason, it is just the pretense. I am sure they wanted to do all these things for a very long time already. Restricting the mobility of the citizens and closing down businesses when they want to, when they feel like it, but it goes even further. And I will explain that with some more harsh examples now. The next example is from the city of Münster. Here, a man wanted to hold a funeral for his late wife. But as is customary, he wanted to have a little wake with 30 people after the funeral, which means he wanted to have some coffee with 30 friends and relatives. And he presented a hygiene concept for that event, for this wake. There was, of course, hygiene rules, there was social distancing, everything he thought of. But the courts turned him down and they said, well, while technically funerals are still legal under severe hygiene restrictions, a wake is not really part of that, so no wake for you. Think about the way that the courts phrased their response. They said funerals are still legal. Oh gee, thank you. We are so happy that we don't have to dispose of our relatives in some kind of a septic tank or just cremate them. And a wake, by the way, in Central Europe, as in almost all other places on the planet, is of course part of a funeral. And here you can see already how our way of life, our identity, our heritage is destroyed. And it has nothing to do with any viruses. That is for sure. So this poor man was not even able to talk to his relatives after the funeral of his wife over a cup of coffee. It goes without saying, of course, that for certain people that, well, shouldn't really be in Germany, all these rules don't apply. They can do here whatever they want to do. If you think that this is horrible, wait for the next example. In many places in Germany, the authorities asked people to put their little children, I'm talking about children as young as 3 years of age, in complete isolation if they had contact with someone who was tested positive. What that means is that for 14 days, these little children have to be isolated in the apartment or in the house. They have to be in an individual room and they're not allowed to talk to people or only through a locked door maybe. And they're explicitly not allowed to eat with other people. They must eat by themselves in their rooms for 2 weeks. So I have no idea what these city administrators were smoking, and for sure we know that they never had any children. You cannot do that to a young child. That is abuse. But it gets even worse. In Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, it was decided that should parents fail to put their children in isolation at home, the authorities will take away their children. Yes. They would use force, they would enter their homes, take away their children and put them into a closed facility, as they phrased it. And I should add that these are precisely the same tools that the communist government of Eastern Germany in the GDR used against dissidents. They took away people's children because they were not politically aligned with them, because they were dissidents. It went even that far that when a woman who was known to be an enemy of the state gave birth in a hospital, that they just told that woman that their child didn't make it. In reality, they put that child into a state orphanage or gave it away to a party member as a foster child. That is what the regime under which Angela Merkel grew up was doing. And Merkel is Chancellor of Germany now, and lo and behold, only 30 years after reunification, we have exactly the same measures now in the Federal Republic of Germany. Isn't that a surprise? But of course, our government has taken precautions, as the newspaper Zeit Online tells us. They say that the secret police of Germany is now putting critics of the government's policies under observation. Wow, opposition members and dissidents being put under observation by a secret police force. Well, that is not reminiscent of communism whatsoever. So you might have heard the news that a new vaccine might be available soon. A collaborative project of the US company Pfizer and the German company BioNTech announced that they are in an advanced stage now. It is just funny that now that this vaccine is within reach or maybe available very soon, the attitude of the people in Germany towards such a vaccine has miraculously changed. When all this talk about a vaccine was still far away, many Germans said, "Oh yeah, sure, I will get vaccinated, no problem." But now that they know a little more about it and that it might soon become an actual choice they have to make, now that it's not somewhere undefined in the murky, misty future, but it might be here in a couple of months, who knows? Now the willingness of Germans to get vaccinated has dropped significantly in the surveys. Gee, I wonder why that might be. But hey, I'm sure we will find enough guinea pigs for this new pharmaceutical concoction. They say they only need round about 60 or 70% of the population to be vaccinated for realizing or establishing herd immunity. Why don't they start with all the government workers and public officers and such? And then all the people who voted for Angela Merkel, the Green Party, the Social Democrats and the Liberal Party, I mean, they should really be first in line, I think. And isn't that what China is doing also? They are testing their vaccine with their government workers. I think that is a very enlightened and modern progressive approach. So I think public school teachers and maybe people who work for the finance and tax authorities, they should really be first in line here. I mean, they deserve it. So to sum up, the German state is just testing the waters. They want to see how far they can go. And at the same time, they are using Stasi techniques and the secret police in order to smoke out any resistance groups or any dissident voices right away. So the state knows that many of the citizens are pissed, and this is why they are turning Germany into even more of a police and a surveillance state than it has been anyway up until now. As they are torturing the population more and more, they also need to restrain them and to take away their options in resisting and fighting back progressively more and more. Alright, let me know what you think about that and how it is in your country down below, as always. Take care, Servus, Kameraden.